Hey, hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome back to the Iron Man Experience, a podcast about society, art, entertainment, culture, movies, sports, a little bit of geopolitics, and now today we're going to talk about pets. This has been an ongoing journey with Burfi. If you have not seen the previous episodes, I do recommend go and check out the Burfi Diaries. Essentially, we are tracking the journey of our little golden retriever. He's now 5.5 months old. His name is Burfi, and right from the train travel through to getting integrated into the human lives and societies is what we're trying to capture with each episode. And in this episode, we're going to talk about the three P's: poop, potty, and puke for the pet parent. Like four P's. Now, you might wonder what's different. I mean, there are a ton of videos, there are plenty of videos out there which talk about the potty training and the pee training. So, why do yet another video? Well, this is not about the dog. This is about the human that owns the dog, right? The pet parent, and the mental setup, as it were, or the mindset that one needs to be ready with while dealing with the three P's: poop, potty, poop, pee, and puke. And so, in this episode, I share some instances on what are the basic precautions, basic do's and don'ts while you manage your puppy. And you just brought the puppy into your home and he's peeing everywhere or she's peeing everywhere. And there is puke sometimes, there is a whole bunch of things. This is pretty normal, but nobody really prepares you mentally. What are the things to think about, be prepared about? So, in this episode, we'll try and touch up a little bit about those aspects. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Now, before I dive in, you do know that Iron Man Experience is a slow burn podcast. So, this is no rapid, quick fix, quick tips kind of thing. So, I would rather that you sit back, relax. The pacing, the slow pacing is by design so that it focuses more on practical, day to day, objective information and feedback, which you can take back and execute and think through it rather than have a very quick, wishy-washy high-level point of view. With that disclaimer in mind, the question, I think, if you look at this picture, the question that pops into my mind is: are you this hapless human who's struggling to manage the three P's: poop, pee, and puke? So let's dive into. You don't have to dive in, but let's address each of these aspects. Like the most um, common one is it's not like a order of hierarchy or anything, but the probability. So peeing is number one, followed by poop, and then followed by puke. Right? So peeing is something that is going to be very frequent, especially when they are puppies. They are like marking the territory everywhere. Like wherever they go, probably squat on their hind legs and a little bit in the bedroom, little bit in the balcony, little bit. And as much as you want to potty train them and pee train them, mentally it sometimes becomes a little exhausting because it could happen every 2 hours. Like go back to the time when you had your baby and you probably were very comfortable having a diaper, and so that worry is off you. So on a similar note, there are pee pads that are available, but it's the mindset, right? Oftentimes the smell gets to you, and so mentally, when you get a puppy home, please understand that it's a living being. It's not a toy. It's a living, the first prerequisite of mine. And I know it sounds very obvious, but many people sometimes, yeah, there are different motivations to get a puppy. Sometimes people get it for their children. Sometimes they get it for not to feel lonely. Sometimes it is to almost like a plaything. All said and done, and there's no right or wrong to this. The point is, it's a living being, and it has got emotions, it has got feelings, it has got, it will react to how you treat him. So when they are babies, 3 months, 4 months old, the first mental preparation that you need to do is be absolutely comfortable with wherever they pee. Right? Initially, the way it works out is the first few times it's a bit it's a bit difficult, where the pee pad is probably not soaked enough. Sometimes there isn't a pee pad, then you have to find a rug, or sometimes a paper to dry the pee. Then there is this after smell of pee, and so those kind of things. So the mental aspect of it is, what you make peace with yourself is, it's very natural, it's very normal, and be prepared with it. So the basic preparations, right? The pee pads, if you can afford them, they are quite expensive actually to sustain. But the kitchen towels, if you can afford that, that's a cheaper alternative. So kitchen towels work just fine. Have a separate, like 4 or 5 rolls of those big kitchen towels, and wherever they pee, uh, put it on top, and so it'll soak it up very easily. It's wise to invest in a glove. Those latex gloves are there, those surgical gloves, which are not very expensive, and so that you don't dirty your hands as well. So you pick it up, put it in a plastic bag, and dispose it in the right container. More importantly, if you are going to dispose it in your toilet, then make sure that it is flushable. The kitchen towel might not be flushable. The other toilet rolls are flushable, so you might want to check that. So mentally be ready for the fact that every 2 hours or so, especially when they're in 0 to 6 months, expect them to pee all over the house. What helps though is having a perfume close by. If you can have those small pocket perfumes, you spray in and around the area where they have peed. It helps that if there is a mop, you can just wipe it so that the smell does not. Part of the reason the smell becomes a little more if they drink less water, as is the case with humans. Very, very similar, right? Uh, and the other thing is, if you let it be there for a long time, and so it's important that you wipe it with water, as in if you have a mop, use it and clean it, then that works a lot. A lot of people use the puppy cage, as it were, and they wait till the end of day or to clean the entire base. That can make your whole room smell a bit more, and so it's important to frequently keep cleaning it. Remind yourself, this is a time bound activity, it's a time bound process. It's just for a few months, it's not something that will go on for the rest of their lives, right? Once they grow up, and they grow up fairly quickly, they get trained very quickly, and once they in fact mature, as it were, they will immediately start to go near the washroom, near the drain, near the balcony, which are easier places to wipe off or wash away and all that. And or if you have the access, if you don't live in a high rise or a condo, if you live in a ground floor apartment or a house where they can go into the nearby park or garden or stuff like that. So those are the basic prerequisites that you have to keep in mind as a pet parent, that they will be anywhere and everywhere. Now, that's not where it ends. The other time, what actually sometimes it caught me by surprise as well, and Burfi had already peed, but when a new face comes into the house, a friendly face, probably a dog lover themselves, and they get super excited. So when they get super excited, they pee. And they just not, it was like not just little peas, they're like massive, I mean, like a lot of quantity. And you're like, you don't know how to react, right? At the first time, you get a little embarrassed, you get a like, oh my god, what am I doing? So don't get hassled. uh, Out of personal experience, I can tell you, don't get hassled. If it's a dog lover, they will understand, they would have gone through it themselves. If it's not a dog lover, they might react, oh my god, what happened? Oh no, they could be this odd remark. Don't get upset about it. Like, people are not used to it, right? It's your decision to have a baby, a pet at home, and so these are so-called accidents. They will happen, especially when guests come in. So prepare that in advance as much as you can. Before the guests enter, you could tell them that you have a puppy who might accidentally pee, so just be mindful and careful, please don't mind. Also, before the guests come, or if you're expecting somebody, it always helps if somebody calls you before they come. uh, that You get them, take them out, help them relieve themselves, and so the chances of peeing when a new phase comes in kind of goes down. So that's the second part. The third part is, of course, when you take them for a walk. Oftentimes, you will find there is this empty stretch of place, and you're hoping that they will pee, but they don't. And then, when there are lots of people around and sitting, they pee exactly in there. Please don't get embarrassed by that. You will get some looks, especially if you are surrounded by a majority of people who are dog insensitive or pet insensitive, or they don't like dogs or pets in general. So you might face those odd looks or maybe an odd comment. Please don't get into a fight. Don't get into an argument. That's not, because it'll scare your pet. See, the objective is not to make the pet feel more nervous than what they already are at that point in time. Right? They're vulnerable when they're peeing, and so let them feel comfortable. It's, as a pet parent, it's your job to shield them. So you shield them with all these prying eyes, and you make sure that they pee peacefully. Carry a bottle of water, those 500 ml, Bisleri bottles or whatever. Refill them, and wherever they pee, pour water. It'll drain out, and there won't be any residual smell. And if you can afford a spray, have a little spray, and so people will realize that you are doing, and you are well within your rights to take your dog for a walk. The only prerequisite is, don't just ignore that they've peed and as if it never happened. I've seen pet parents just walk off. Like, no, you're own up to it, right? It's part of your integration exercise with your pet or pet's life, right? And so you make that effort to say, hey, this happens, and so, but I'm not running away from it. I am going to address it right up. And so then you take care of the business. When once it pees, make sure it doesn't step all over the pee. Stands aside while you and it always helps if you have two people, so that they might not sit in one place and they might prowl around and you might find it difficult. So a smart thing to do is probably carry a bottle in the pocket and a drinking water while you go for a walk, because they get thirsty very quickly. So two bottles, right? One, the sipper bottle, which they, when you press the water, bubbles up and then they can drink. And the other one is, of course, the cleaning one, which once they pee, you just drop some water, spray some perfume, and then move on. And then people will get used to it. So that was the pee part of it. And there are many such other scenarios and circumstances. But mental preparation, to sum this up for you, is that please expect it to happen. Please expect it to happen when you least expect it. Please expect it to happen when people are there. And don't worry about it. In the next segment, let's talk about the more difficult one, which is the potty. Okay, now that you understood the peeing part, let's figure out the poop part. Again, the usual tips and tricks: the towel, the glove, the plastic packet. When there is poop, put the paper on top of it, take the plastic packet, scoop it with your hand, and then fold it inwards, and then you can dispose it off. There are multiple ways. Some people use the poop picker. I personally didn't find it much useful, because and this is a trigger alert, right? If it grosses you out, then you might want to skip this part. Essentially, the quality of poop is important. Sometimes it is solid, so it's easier to pick up. Sometimes it's semi-solid, it is a little difficult, and sometimes it's not even semi-solid, and it's a nightmare. So one has to be careful of the diet. So before we worry about the what is coming out, one needs to worry about what is going in. So the diet that your pet follows is something that you have to be very mindful of. On one hand, you don't want to give them foods which you will hear this from the vets wherever you go, that whatever is good for the parent is good for the dog, barring some exceptions, berries, nuts, salt, and all those things. But by and large, if you stick, I mean, there are two schools of thoughts again there. One is just stick to pet food like Royal Canin or Pedigree or what have you for the rest of their life. So do not feed them anything from the table, from, I'm having a bourbon biscuit or cream biscuit Oreo or something, and I give something. So it kind of messes with the food trajectory. If you give them a higher or a better alternative, then coming back to the old alternative will not work. Very simple. And so, what is it that you give? Are you a vegetarian? Are you a non-vegetarian? That also determines the quality of the poo. So while you don't want them to get constipated, you also don't want them to have loosies. So I know of people who trying to keep their pet very healthy. They give lots of papayas, and they almost act as laxatives and also heat up their body. So knowing exactly what to give and how much to give, please talk to a proper, well informed vet, and have a proper diet chart, especially in the formative years, in the first few months and the first year. And so uh, what you feed the dog is what will eventually come out. And so it's very important that you understand that this is at least a three times per day process. At least when again, remember, this it's a pup right now, right? You're talking about 0 to 6 months, 7 months, that range. Eventually it will become twice a day, perhaps once a day. You'd want to stick to twice a day, but just saying, right? And once they get trained, they know exactly where to go. And then we'll talk about when they're trained and they go out to poo. But at home, you just brought in the puppy. So the mental preparation that you need to know is that they will poop little, but they will poop frequently. And so that's one thing that you clearly can't let it be. You have to immediately get up and wipe it off. It's also important to very start very early on the potty training. The poop training can start where once it is done, say in the hall or in the corridor or in the foyer area, then you wipe the poop up and take the pup with you to the place where they are designed to poop, if you have a designated place. And so some dogs pick it up quickly because they get the familiar smell, and so they know the next time I have to go here and poop. The last thing that you want to do is scream at them, shout at them. Especially, some people freak out and say, no, 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 don't stop. They don't get it. So there's no point in freaking out, right? The idea is to act quickly. As I mentioned in the previous segment, this is a very vulnerable time for them. You might even see that they're making eye contact with you. That means they're trusting you to take care of them because while they're doing their business. So it's very important that you be absolutely protective and watch out especially if the puppy is outside. Watch out for other dogs trying to barge in from behind or anybody else. But we'll come to that. Right now, we are still at home and the puppy is pooping everywhere. So, as is the case with peeing, please have a perfume handy. Once the poop is done, go with the pup to the place where you want to dispose the poop, and they will smell. And eventually, it probably takes about a month or so. In your mind, remind yourself that this will gradually become easier, right? So that mental preparation is important. And you will see that there will be times, and you will almost feel guilty that once they're trained, and there could be this odd occasion where they wanted to probably poop or pee badly, but it didn't strike you to open the balcony door or the designate area, and they've just been holding tight. And once you then therefore realize, oops, it's been too long, and they just almost rush out. So it's important that if you're a new pet parent, every 2 hours, 3 hours, have a reminder, check poop. That's what I did. I put a recurring reminder, 8 a.m., 10 a.m., 12 p.m., that kinds. If they don't do, then that's fine. In fact, because they only understand sounds like sit, come, so do potty, do susu, that kind, do pee. Use monosyllabic words as far as possible, and take them to the place and say do potty. So this repetition, the sound repetition settles in the mind, and they associate that this sound means this action. And so try that a few times and it'll become easier. So that's what you do at home. Once the puppy is more strong enough to go out into the road or walk the road, please be careful of bigger dogs. And there are even, I have found that even smaller dogs can attack, larger sized puppies. Uh, and so be careful while they're pooping that nobody sneaks in from behind, especially if you have indies or stray dogs around. Make sure that they are at a distance. Carry a whip with you, just to wave them off, and distract them. And while they are pooping, or they're about to poop, they will give some telltale signs, right? The tail, they will sniff that area. They'll, if you're walking, they'll suddenly stop. They'll sniff that area, go probably make a couple of circles, and then they're about to squat. And this is an experiment. It's a trial and error thing. So I carry those big towels, kitchen towels, with me, especially when Burfi is on the road. The moment there is a jerk, and he's like, stop, immediately I know he's about to poop. So I then walk behind him, insofar he is, I'm walking in front of him or he's walking beside me. Then I make sure that I walk behind him. And then when he slows down the next time and begins to squat, I immediately place the square kitchen roll uh, below his bum, and then the poop falls on it. It becomes a smooth ride. There is no stain, there is nothing. The plastic packet is ready. You can just fold, put it inside, and dispose it off. The timing, though, is very difficult. It is something you will perfect it, right? But mentally, keep walking. Don't put on your headphones and check your phone while you're taking the dog for a walk, and you don't know what they're when they feel the need to poop and all. At least spend that quality time with the dog while you're taking them for a walk, and keep observing them. Many a times they will, they're walking and they will look back at you like, am I doing the right thing? Are we going the right way? That that's their way of communicating. It's not that they'll always bark and all that. So pick up on those signs, right? And you will know that this is the area. And if you follow one path every single day, and they poop in that particular area, probability of they pooping the next time in the same area is extremely high, because they get the remnant smell. And so they will go back to that same designated area, poop there, and then again continue the walk. So this also, try one or two times. The third, fourth time, they will know this is the spot, this is the time, and you can immediately slide it under the bum. They poop, you clean and go. And even if you don't, right, even if you can't, so don't worry about it. The poop falls, put the towel on top, grab it, put it inside the packet, drop it. Don't get grossed out by it. It probably takes, it took two, or by the third time I was absolutely comfortable. The first one is always, I was more nervous than uncomfortable. Like, will I make a mess out of it? That kind of stuff. Especially, it helps if you've had a baby at home, a human baby, because they pretty much do the same. And as good the diapers are, there are instances when, just the time that you took the diaper off, they pooped somewhere or they peed somewhere. So it's not something that is very uncommon. It takes that degree of mental preparation, that it's a very normal exercise. And preferably you take them early in the morning when there are fewer people, and so you don't feel uncomfortable. This is when you're starting off. Then there is nothing to feel uncomfortable once it's happened 2 3 times. It's a very natural thing, and people also understand. You might find that odd reaction on the street, oh god, and don't blame them for it, right? They are entitled to their reaction. So as long as they're not making any untoward comment or remark about you or the dog, or hurting the dog in some way, let them carry on with their lives. And of course, all of this information is very India specific, right? A lot of this information might not be as applicable to, say, United States or some of the other countries where the population densities are less, and dog sensitivity is high. In India, the population density is very high, and dog sensitivity is often mixed. There are sections of the society which are absolute dog lovers. They will even adopt stray dogs, dogs which are not well. uh, they are sick, and there are enough of agencies and corporations and people who take care of them, then the majority, next best majority, is those set of people who adopt the neighborhood stray dog or neighborhood indie and feed them and that kind of. And then there are those who will go and purchase pets, high-end pets, and then of course take care of them as well. While all this crowd exists, there is also that crowd which detests dogs. They just have a trauma, they have a fear factor, they get scared, and it's age independent. In fact, I'm finding that kids are lesser scared than some adults. But idea is not to get upset about it. Idea is to educate them, and like, if you have not seen some of the previous videos, uh, I've highlighted how to inform them that what is a guard dog, what is a home dog, how should they pet a dog, and so on and so forth. So pooping outside the house is at a designated spot, as is the case with peeing. It can happen while in front of people, while you least expect it. So please don't freak out, don't get embarrassed, don't get nervous. Just remain calm. Preferably, like I said, when it's a puppy, have two people go with you so that one can hold on to the puppy and while you do the cleaning business. If you are alone, please make sure that you manage the cleaning process well while holding on to the puppy. It's a bit difficult, but not impossible. You can handle it. So that's the long and short of the poop part of it, inside, outside. If you manage these two, and I promise you, it becomes easier. So don't worry about it. If you manage these two, then the third part, which is the puking part, becomes absolutely like a walk in the park. Let's find out. Okay, this is the final part. You're done with the pee, you're done with the poop. Now the puke. This will be a short segment because there isn't much. Pee and poop are probably going to be the most discussed. Puke, not so much. Puke largely could be your fault. And I'll tell you why. Because oftentimes people feed random stuff to their pets without realizing that the digestive systems might not accept it. Please remember, their digestive system does not operate like the human digestive system. It's perhaps a little more sensitive, and it might not be able to digest that food. And so, very, very important that you stick to the prescribed diet, stick to consistently giving that diet. And a very important point is monitor the quantity. Sometimes dogs will always be hungry, right? So please don't overfeed them. That could also lead to indigestion, and then eventually they might puke. I won't go into the fact about what you do when they puke, but I'll just give you one tip to keep in mind. If they puke once or twice, you don't need to run to the doctor. It can be fixed at home. But if it has happened more than once or twice, or if the color of the puke is green or some obnoxious color and is happening repetitively 2, 3 times, 4 times, immediately go to the doctor. All I'm trying to say is exercise caution in the sense, but don't panic about it. Like, understand what is an exception and what is a trend. If it is a trend, as is the case everywhere, if it's happening multiple times, please don't get intelligent. Let the vet decide what's the next best course of action. But don't get paranoid if there is a little puke, if they've drunk, if they've had too much milk, and if they puke a little bit here, you don't need to rush to the vet. That's all I'm saying. So use your judgment, balance carefully. The last point about puke is, of course, what they eat while they're on the walk. See, you can't stop them from sniffing and smelling plants, and they will smell even pee and puke and poop, which has been left behind by other pets or other animals. Don't get grossed out by it. So this not getting grossed out by all these conversations is perhaps one of the most important things of having a pet. Because remember, they won't be this small their entire lives. They'll be this small probably for a month, then they become big, right? And so the 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 cuteness often goes away very quickly. The puppy cuteness, there is the cuteness when they grow up as well, but the puppy cuteness goes, and sometimes people get disappointed, they lose interest after that. So please make sure that mental preparation is it, because peeing, pooping and puking is pretty much normal. And if you actually are a animal lover, then you will not react as much. You will kind of accept it. So the puke part is small and simple. That please make sure they sniff whatever they like to, but not eat what they are sniffing. So the way I do it is I follow the path, as in the walking path, which Burfi is walking, like 2 steps ahead. So we walk together, but my eyesights are on Burfi's path, not my path. And that's why I told in the previous segment, please, when you take your dog for a walk, refrain from using the phone, checking your phone, and being distracted. Spend quality time walking your dog and watching the path where they are walking and what they are sniffing. More importantly, what they are eating, and they will be very swift. They could, and you know how our streets and lanes are, right? They could be, the most dangerous thing is people have left behind their chewing gum. It is small, it still smells minty, and it's extremely tempting. You will not even see it sometimes because it's probably covered in mud. But they'll spot it. If they lick that chewing gum and swallow it, they could get choked, and then clearly they could puke, because it will not sit well. So these are the common things to worry about: chewing gums, toothpicks, and earbuds, and then plastic wrappers. People have had biscuits and thrown the wrapper. These are sure short signs of danger, and they are tempted towards that. Despite all the training, despite all the don't do this and all that, they will go there. It's your job as a pet parent to stop that from happening, to be intuitive, to be ahead, to be 2 steps ahead, to see they do not eat. And not just these things, they could be earthworms, they could be, especially if you're walking in a garden or a park. That's where the ticks come from as well. So be very careful about all these things, that what are they sniffing and what are they licking and eating, and be absolutely proactive about it. So if you take care of that, then you will make sure that they don't puke as often. If there is a stomach upset, if there is some other viral infection, something different, then you will immediately know that it has a recurring pattern to it. Their body language will change. You touch their nose if they have temperature. The nose will no longer be wet. And so the first thing you've got to do is take them to the doctor, take them to the vet. And like I said before, don't get intelligent on this. Please don't experiment with home remedies. Just take them to the doctor, and rest they will take care of it. Well, I hope this information was useful. That's all the time I had for this episode of the Iron Man Experience. Please do share this with those who care. It is important for us to spread the love. There are lots of people who think they have covered all the bases, but sometimes they miss the basics. And the goal of this episode or this series or this podcast is to touch upon the finer details. And especially, like I mentioned before, it's not about the dog, it's about the human or the pet parent. And so until we meet next time, and I have got a ton of episodes coming up on Burfi, and I'd love some suggestions. If there are any questions that you have, if I don't have the answers, I will redirect you to the people who do. If you like this, please do share, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Till we meet next time, stay well, stay safe, and keep listening to the Iron Man Experience. This is your host, Iron, and I wish you a Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. Cheers.